All right, everybody, welcome to Let's Talk Esports. My name is Yeso. I am your host, and I'm joined by a very special guest today. He competed in the first two seasons of Series E Apex Legends on Team Rockstar and Team Cheez It. He is a four-time ALGS finalist and the newest addition to the Ghost Gaming Apex Legends roster. I've got Rakkinishu joining me today. Rack, good to see you, my man. Good to talk to you again. How we doing?
Yeah, not too bad, not too bad. Glad to be here. But four-time. I'm more than that.
You're
Yeah,
more?
14, I think.
14? Okay. Are
14,
we
yeah.
I think we're
You're
getting a little
lowballing
fast
me.
and I think we're getting a little fast and loose with the ALGS finals definition. Am I crazy?
I mean, what's your definition?
So, I went by Liquipedia and the
hmm
four ALGS finals I included were Split 1 playoffs for this season, champs back in June, as well as a winter circuit and a fall circuit finals for ALGS.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I see your reasoning there, but
Okay.
I guess historically, it was whenever you just made it to the final in a circuit. So
Okay.
you'd have Autumn Circuit 1. If you made it to that finals, you were technically a one-time finalist.
Okay, so let me
So
let me correct myself. A 14-time
it's something
ALGS
like that.
finalist. It's all right. We won't worry about the math. We're not here to do the math today, but it's good to have you on, my man. We are recording this on Wednesday, February 23rd. So Rack actually just in the last hour finished up playing in Series E Pro Night. I appreciate you taking the time, my man. We're going to talk about a lot of things today, but I really want to start from the beginning. We'll kind of go just front to back here. So let's off the top. How did you get your start in competitive gaming?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question because I think I actually have a much different path than most people. So I've always been playing games. Obviously, some from a young age, I've always loved them. However, I used to just just play the latest game out. I was I still am. I think a very diverse. I like to play all games, and I like just being a gamer in general. I love different genres. I love all genres. But I remember when Apex came out, it was kind of the same deal. I used to spend a couple of weeks with a game when it came out, and then get bored of it, go to the next game. I remember I was the same way with Apex. I really liked it, and but like something brought me back around. But ultimately, Apex is the first game I've ever competed in.
Okay.
I eventually came back to Apex after a couple weeks, or after a month of not playing it, 2 months. Remember, it came back to the very last rank season, last week of the first rank season. I came back and said, I'm going to get Predator. It's a goal of mine. And then I did, and I never left. It's something we can get into more of that, but I never left after that. And this has been the first competitive game
So it
that
really
I've played.
sounds like you thought you could get away, but Apex kind of it had its hooks in you. Uh, I want to know more why you came back because a lot of people ask, why did you get into Apex? What was it about the game? The most common answer is the movement. It's one of the things that has really set it apart from other games in the genre. Is it the same story for you, or is it something else about the game that brought you back after that month off?
Yeah, I think ultimately the gameplay is definitely very, very good, and is something I find myself still enjoying. It's very hard to find a game as deep mechanically as Apex. There's new movement tech that's getting discovered now, 3 years later. What the heck? And you see that I think the best games in the world have that story because there's still new metas coming out of things like Melee, like Smash Melee,
Yeah.
and what so the best games are built on a very a very deep core, and I definitely find that in Apex. But I will admit, I don't necessarily think that's what brought me back.
Okay.
Or you know what? It's probably what brought me back, the gameplay itself, because I really enjoyed it. But what kept me around was probably just the people I met and the sense of community I started to find myself in, because I had never had that before. Like I said, I was a lone wolf gamer that just played the newest games. I had a little friend group, people from high school I used to play games with, but I never I always wanted to try different games, so I never really played with them. So yeah, I'd say ultimately it was just the people I met along the way when I did come back.
Yeah, I think it shows. I've gotten pretty deep in like the Apex Legends Twitter over the last year since coming into Series E, and it seems like the Apex community seems like a small town. Like everybody knows everybody. You've all played together and ranked. So many of you have competed on teams together in tournaments, whether it was just like a one-off or you were in Series E together, you played an ALGS together. So really, I feel like the Apex Legends professional community is very much like that small town feel where everybody knows everybody. So it's awesome, and I think it makes for very interesting relationships and dynamics in the scene, and it's fun to watch. What made you realize that you could kind of go to the next level and really take a shot at being a pro in Apex?
Yeah, that's like that's a tough one because like I remember, I remember when I came back to the game, I got
Hmm.
to diamond by myself, and
Okay.
I was like, that's pretty simple. But then I got into a pred lobby when I was diamond, and I was like, dang, okay, these guys are good. Like I was like, okay, and that's when I realized I needed to start playing with other people,
Hmm.
and that's when I got into some of the LFG discords to meet new people. Some that are still around today. I remember Euris and Tech, namely, kicking around in those LFGs early on. But ultimately, I eventually got to Predator, for the first season in that last week. And I was like, dang, that was a big goal of mine. Like, I am an Apex Predator. And I stuck around in the game because I met people, I kept playing. And then I realized, like, I'm actually, like, I'm not just like I'm not a bad Predator. I'm a pretty good Predator. Like, I'm actually playing pretty well. And I kept getting, like, compliments on, like, unique play style. And I was just like, okay, well, like, I really like what I'm doing. I like the sense of progression that I'm getting,
Hmm.
and it eventually eventually ALGS. I remember I came in, yeah, like so I came in last week. I never got to see like Poland happen, and I think like shortly after the like ALGS was announced, and I was just like, hey, I'm here. I love playing the game. Let's see how good I am really, because you'd always heard rumblings about like how what is ranked, like how is it really compared, like how are you when you're actually against the best players playing their hardest. I think that's most important, and I wanted to test it, and didn't go so well the first time, but the second time it did. So that's probably when I was like, okay, I'm supposed to be here.
Do you feel like you've gotten the answer then when you talk about trying to find out, how good am I? What exactly can I do here? Do you feel like you have that answer now, or you're even still figuring it out as you compete?
Yeah, I mean, I think I understand where I sit, like holistically in the
Hmm.
in the in the pro scene, and like, but as far as like my potential and like how good I can get, I still find myself getting a lot better. And like it's like a plateau system, right? Like you'll improve a lot, you'll plateau, but then you give it enough time or you change some stuff, and then you'll boost back up. So I've definitely seen that too. I've come to really just be patient with myself and like not stress out, but I've seen a lot of improvement. I think, like I said, holistically, I think I'm knocking on the door of like a top team and being a top player, and that's enough drive for me.
That's awesome. And of course, we can dig into kind of more of what's going on with that a little later on. I want to talk about, though, the fact that you work a full time job alongside competing as a pro. You are not just a professional Apex Legends player. How do you feel that you balance both of these parts of your life?
Yeah, it's obviously a lot, um, but I feel like I've somehow found I've been doing it a while. So like um, I've been doing it for almost 2 years, doing full time work, and a little bit longer than that. There was a gap when COVID first started that I was laid off, unfortunately, but
Hmm.
just due to the pandemic, and that's when I got some like actual time into Apex full time. But I don't know. I think I'm lucky. I'm really lucky to have a very understanding workspace that my management believes in what I do, and they know how important it is to me, and they're willing to work with me.
Hmm.
I think we need to meet. Like I oftentimes meet in the middle with my work. It shouldn't just like I don't expect them to give me all the time in the world to do this stuff, and so we meet in the middle. Just be honest with them. But I'm very lucky to have a good workspace, and I think on a management level of like how energy levels, I think I've gotten to a point where I manage it well. Like my body's adjusted to like, okay, I work a full day, but then I still have to have backup storage for a tournament.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say early on I was very tired and I probably couldn't do it, but your body adjusts to what you need to do. And I know it's a long answer, but yeah.
I'm here for the long answers. You know, you want to get in the weeds. I'm all about it. I'm here for it. Do you feel like that full-time job, having that, gives you some weight off of your shoulders when you come to competing? Because, you know, when you look at a lot of players that go all in on being a pro, maybe they aren't working on the side, and then their, you know, entire income is based off of prize pools, or if they're able to get a good contract from a team. Do you feel like the fact that you have that full-time job takes some of that weight off of your shoulders when maybe the prize money isn't coming in, you know, the results aren't quite there?
Yeah, I guess so. Like, it's something where like I'm so competitive, I don't even like think about the like the comfortability I have. I think I probably take it for granted is what I
Okay.
do. Like you're right, because there are a lot of players that don't, that they somewhat live off this. I think a lot of them stream and do other things. They don't expect necessarily all the winnings to pay for them, because that's I think that's just impossible.
Sure.
But yeah, I guess so. Yeah, probably in like hindsight, and like yeah, I probably have a weight lifted off of me that I know I have a backbone of support. But
So your name really came onto my radar, of course, when I joined Series E, and you had actually already been there for a season when I came in. So I want to go back to the start of your Series E journey. What exactly were your goals when you jumped in, and do you feel like you have achieved said goals when you set out to compete in Series E?
yeah, that's a good question. I think like when Series E first came around, I know we kind of mentioned this the other day when we were playing, but like it was a little bit different than what it is now, because
Mm-hmm.
the lines between like the top teams and then the next level was a little bit more blurred. So like a lot of the teams that had contracts didn't think like they thought it was like beneath them to have a Series E contract, which is funny, which is like right, like I make $0 and now I
Yeah.
make, and but it's beneath me.
Mm-hmm.
It's a funny experience. I think like I remember like when I signed the contract and like getting paid to do, it was the first time I could say like I get paid to play video games, right? Like
Yeah.
for me personally, and even though it was on the side, like I had my job, I get paid, like that was just such like a cool thing to say. And I think it did I think it gives you, if anything, it just gives you confidence like
Mm-hmm.
to like I don't know if I had any like goals per se specific to Series E. I think Series E was just like a good um it's a good, like you said, like it is a stepping stone, but it's
Mm-hmm.
more, but not in the way that you think it is. Like I think it is more of like a confidence thing. Like it gives you a boost in yourself that you can use, um, not necessarily on this like weird system that we have with competitive right now, because anyone can be a top team one day.
Sure, sure. What were your kind of favorite parts about those two seasons that you spent in Series E?
Ooh, it's a good question. I remember first season. I'm trying to remember. Yeah, I only played first season with Rockstar, right? I didn't play like half a season with them.
The old boys with Crummy and Matt Pickett.
OG squad. You like
Yes.
that, mate? That's what we were called. You like
Yes.
that, mate? Yeah, that's a OG. I remember a memory of just getting I think we got like 20. It's so funny because like back then, I wouldn't. It wasn't that long ago, but it was like I don't know, like what, a year, a little over a year ago. Um,
I'm trying to think. I think season two ended in what,
that
like
was season
late
one though, wasn't it?
season, or yeah,
Yeah,
for Rockstar. Yeah. So you guys ended what, probably right near the end of 2020, early 2021.
yeah. I can't remember. It's about a year.
Okay.
But I remember the game, like we got a 20 kill win, which like back then was a pretty monstrous game. It's still not a bad win today,
Hmm.
but like you're seeing the standard, like I think the average for for kills in a win is much higher than it used to be, um, even from a year ago. So I remember we had a lot of, excuse me, we had a lot of fun with that 20 kill game. I remember like everything was clicking that game. That's just one memory I have. And it ended on a clutch from Matt Pickett.
Okay.
We actually have that like recorded on YouTube on his YouTube channel, and I watch that sometimes. So that's a good memory.
I'll have to go check it out. What were the most important things you kind of took away from those 2 seasons? You already touched on kind of the confidence building you were able to do. Was it really just that, or anything else you walked away from that experience with?
This is more specific to the team and my
Mhm.
personal experience. Like me and Crummy used to go at it, and
I don't think you're alone in that.
Crummy goes at it with like everybody.
Sure.
It's funny because in hindsight, like I really appreciate that, and I did
Hmm.
learn a lot from it. But I just I do remember Series E was like the battlefield for me and Crummy. Like we were 50-50ing a lot with teams like Prodigy, Aces. I forget like who. It was definitely Prodigy,
Hmm.
but I can't remember like the other players. But, like we'd 50 a lot, and we'd lose a 50, and we'd just go at it. So I think the biggest thing I got from Series E was that experience of dealing with Crummy and the benefits that actually did come out of that in the end. Um, but that's something that comes to mind.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like big personalities like him. It's a double edged sword, right? It can be really good. Sometimes it can burn you. I can say, from like a casting and production perspective, we love it because Crummy is incredibly entertaining and for the most part pretty fun to work with, and he's a content machine. So
Yeah.
I'm all about it. I always enjoy him. I'm glad that he's still in the scene, and I'm looking forward to see what he's of course reunited with Matt Pickett, which is super cool as well. So I'm hoping to see you guys compete against each other a little bit more, start a fight, jumping in there. Of course, after those 2 seasons, you joined the season 2 Pop Tarts roster. They had just dropped Stomps. It was just Farmer Lucas and Impulse at the time, and then you guys signed with Noble. How exciting was it for you to sign that first pro contract? And did you kind of at the time feel like, all right, like I finally made it?
Yeah, I think I compared the Series E and that moment a lot with each other because I was like, what was the difference? Because I will admit, like when I signed my first like contract with an org, like that was like I got really excited.
Mm-hmm.
It had always been something that like I don't know, you say a dream of mine, but like not even a dream. It was like farther away from me because, like I said, I wasn't even a competitive gamer. It was just like I knew I was generally good at games, and I would think about like the pro gamer sometimes. And I was just like, I wonder what that's like. So like it was almost like more than a dream to have that happen. More just like like I don't even know what you want to call it, but it was a crazy moment for sure. It was very self fulfilling, and something I'll never forget for sure.
That's awesome to hear. I want to dig a little deeper into your time with Noble. You were with the team with just over 6 months. During that time, you guys qualified for and competed in Pro League, as well as being consistent competitors in Series E Pro Night and playing in other third party events. But the results weren't, I would say, as good as you guys were hoping for at the time. And it seemed like kind of that 15th place finish in the ALGS Pro League Split 1 playoffs was kind of the final nail in the coffin for that iteration of the roster. Tell me about that run with Noble and kind of how you feel about how you guys performed in those 6 months.
Yeah, it was definitely like your typical roller coaster, I'd say, or not even a roller coaster, just up down. Like all teams, or I wouldn't even. It's not all teams because, but most teams have a honeymoon phase.
Mm.
They have a hot start for whatever reason. That's a whole nother conversation you can go in why teams are good at the start and not later. But we had a bit more of a sustained honeymoon. Like we were playing pretty well because we played. And I'm thankful that we actually did have to go through the qualifier for Pro League
Mm.
because there were a lot of things we got to work out, like kinks we got to work out early on, and other teams didn't. Because when we got into Pro League, like we hit the ground running, right? We got like a second place the first week in Pro League, so that got us 9 points. We were feeling really good. The next 2 weeks, we got 2 9th places, which isn't like awful. Like like those are the biggest tournaments of the like some of the biggest tournaments, and you're placing top 10.
Mm.
But we did start to feel some of the cracks because we did get really lucky, I will say, especially in the first week. We made a lot of mistakes, but we just got really lucky on zone pulls.
Mm.
And there were some internal discussions happening, and we can go into that further. But to answer your question, like, I mean, I felt like it was very expected, like, of a team to have a high, but you're gonna have a low, and it happens, and you try to fix things, but it's really hard to come out of a rut, you know. So.
There was a lot of talk at the beginning of Pro League when they came out with the new point format, because of course, you play in Series Z and it's kind of the traditional format where you get the points for kills and stuff, and those accumulate over the week. Whereas ALGS shifted to there are just set placement points for how you perform on a specific day. And they seem, to me, pretty punishing if you aren't getting into the top 10. Like, if you aren't getting in the consistently into the top 10, you just basically almost aren't getting any points. Do you feel like that shift in format specifically hurt you guys? Because even when you were doing consistently well, like, if you didn't get a top placing, you really weren't getting much for that effort.
Yeah, it's funny because, like, North America was, like, I think it was quite different from EU, the way the points stacked out versus like an old system, because I think NA was exactly what it should have been.
Okay.
Which I found interesting. I don't hate the system. I don't. Like, I think it actually is pretty cool, but I'd say I think you're better off just using the points, overall points. I don't like it. Definitely hurts. It's weird because it is kind of tiered, right? Like, first place is overpowered in my opinion. Like,
Sure.
3 points over the next team that got second. Like, 3 points. That's more than a another like ninth place versus, like, that. So I think the tiered system is like a pretty aggressive. You're right. But I don't necessarily think it's like bad. I just think you might as well just use the old, just points stack total up. But no, I don't think it hurt us specifically. I think we were right where we were supposed to be.
Okay. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Kind of your outlook on it.
Yeah, I didn't think we needed that weird system personally, but
fair enough. Let's move then to after ALGS playoffs. I mentioned that you guys finished 15th. Of course, you got in thanks to the adjustments in format with the international LAN getting canceled. After playoffs, you guys kind of mutually decided to part ways with Farmer Lucas, who was the one who originally brought together that Farm Boys roster before the Season 2 qualifiers for Series E. Why did you guys all feel that this was kind of the right move to make for you guys at the time?
Yeah, I think, like, the time that we put into it, going through, getting signed together, having a nice hot start in Pro League, like, that is all something I'll never forget, and, like, something I very am thankful for those guys, and Farmer Lucas specifically, because he was our leader in a sense, as far as, like, the calls. I think over time, at that halfway of the season of Pro League Split 1, with some of the decisions that we were making didn't help the morale that we were having. So like, there was a split between me and Impulse and Farmer Lucas, and that's on both of our fault. It's all of our faults, right?
Sure.
And we started to see, like, a bit of a detraction in how everybody plays, I think. And it just made sense because we were missing some things. Like, there were very visible holes in our game as a team that were never going to be fixed. And, you give it 7 months or 6 months. We played longer than the Noble contract together. We played like 7-8 months together. That's a long time.
Yeah.
I think teams are sticking together longer nowadays, but like 8 months is a good run. And I think that's more than enough time to give a team, we tried to work through things, and, but yeah, just it was time. It was time. We all felt it.
Sure. And ultimately, sometimes things don't work out. I think you do make a good point, especially when you look at the Apex scene in general. It seems like so many rosters are pretty volatile. You see a lot of teams in the tier 2 and tier 3 slots that, don't even last 2 months at times. So I think 8 months, and you consider as well the amount of events that you guys played in and a full split of Pro League as well as playoffs. That is, I would say, enough time for you to sort out, all right, is there a future here? Do we see continued growth with the roster as it is, or do we need to make a change? And ultimately, you guys made that decision, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, of course, after making that decision, you're looking to make some changes in the roster, and then some stuff went down. Earlier this month, specifically, The Noble organization was embroiled in a little bit of a controversy over not paying staff that was brought to light by the social media staff. I won't ask you to speak for anyone else that was affected by what happened, but can you kind of shed any light for us on what happened for your own experience being with Noble? Did you run into any issues getting paid during that time there?
Yeah, so I'd say like we were definitely treated better than what I'm hearing from other people and other
Mm-hmm.
experiences. So definitely feel for those guys, and I hope that gets resolved in any way it can. I will say that like we never had an issue until the very end. So like we were treated fairly. Everything worked until the very end. It's been said before, but like the management over there is great. Can't 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 thank them enough for the opportunity and just being able to work and create content with them. So um, yeah.
Ultimately, it's a tough situation overall, and I agree with you. I hope all the folks that did get affected by it do get their due, get paid the money that they were agreed. So I appreciate you just giving us a little bit of insight there. But let's move to after Noble. You guys have now been given a new opportunity to compete with Ghost Gaming. Interestingly enough, Ghost was actually one of the two other orgs to sign a Series E roster after Season 2, right? It was you guys with Noble. Ghost signed the Season 2 Intel roster, and then Era Eternity took a kind of amalgamation of the Season 2 Rice Krispies Treats roster. While you and Impulse were looking for a third originally, you've now joined Ghost, and you're replacing Madness and Panders, and will be competing with Six as your new third. Why was Six and Ghost Gaming as a whole the right fit for you guys?
Yeah, I think very very early on, me and Impulse had determined that like we aren't the leader type players.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting because I do think that has changed or did adapt as time went on. When Lucas stopped, taking some of that role for whatever reason, like I stepped up and was able to. I wouldn't even say like it was something that I consciously did. It was something that like we need stuff to happen, so I'm going to start making calls and I'm going to start moving the team. And it was fun to do that as a Gibby. But going back to your original question, like we still knew that we wanted someone that knew how to play the game and could lead us to it, because like we're all really experienced players,
Mm-hmm.
or like even just me and Impulse, right? Like we're very experienced. We have a lot of miles in competitive, so like we have no, like we know how to play the game. We know how to shoot. We know what needs to happen. We just need someone to kind of just guide us, right? Like someone that's just like keeps us to a plan. And so we knew we wanted an IGL. And in this day and age, like you want experience still. I still believe like experience is like number one.
Mm-hmm.
Like so we wanted someone seasoned, and we looked at the roster, like the free agents out there. There was a couple things that were supposed to happen, I'll say, just like rosters that were being put together. And
Okay.
this was all before we even heard about the Ghost situation with Madness and Panders. Um, and luckily it just came across, like, the opportunity came up. Six was available, and it just made too much sense. I've always wanted to play with Six from early on, like, a long time ago. I remember messaging once, I don't even know how long ago, just saying like, hey, I'd love to get the opportunity to play with you if like we ever get to. And that came up now. So
Awesome to see that it worked out. Of course, I mentioned at the top of the show that we're an hour and a half separated from you guys competing as a roster for the first time here under that Ghost banner. How are things feeling right now? How have scrims been going? Of course, you guys finished fourth place tonight, and despite not even winning a game, you guys were right there in the mix at the end. How are you guys feeling right now?
yeah, feeling pretty good. I do mention, like, I think we played worse than our score gives, which
Okay.
is like me just being critical of myself or just critical of the team, because I want us to do best. I think things are going, like, I think we're progressing and learning and getting better at a good pace. I think it's interesting because I mentioned a honeymoon phase that teams have, which is like most teams have a honeymoon phase. We don't have a honeymoon phase, which I actually think is better. Like I feel better about not having a honeymoon phase,
Okay.
like because I know like what goes up must come down. So if we're staying steady, that's good for me. Um, So, and this all comes in the face of like a new map, which is crazy. Like
Sure.
that's a huge change. So like we're not trying to like, at least for me personally, I don't want to speak on my teammates, but like I'm trying not to take anything too seriously. Just like I'm not focusing on results. I want to focus on our play. Look at the gaps we have on chemistry, the gaps we have on teamwork. I do think we mesh well on like a temperament and a chemistry level, but there's always going to be gaps, and we're all very logical players. So like we talk things out extensively, which is something I haven't done in a long time. We'll run a play back like 50 times and just like pick it apart, and it's not like blaming or like you should have done this. It's just like more fundamental. Like this needs to happen. This is how you can get better at that. That's something really cool that I haven't had in a while on a team, and it's I'm looking forward to doing it more.
That's awesome to hear, and glad to see that you guys are kind of finding that chemistry early because, of course, there's not a lot of time to prepare because ALGS Pro League starts this weekend, and I want to talk about that. Thankfully, I was prepping the questions for our interview last night, and I went to double check. I was like, did they release the groups yet? And they hadn't. And thankfully, literally during the show tonight, they did. So we were able to look. So you guys did get drawn into Group B for this split of ALGS Pro League. And for the folks watching at home, that group includes NRG, Premier GG, W, which is the Team Vizio roster. You guys, Ghost Gaming, Oxygen, Charlotte Phoenix, Scry, CLG, RCO, and LMK. And LMK, I think, is the Nerf roster. There might be one player switch out of there. I don't think Dimmy plays there, but I think it's Turns, Force, and somebody else. So when you look at that 10 teams that you're competing with, what are your thoughts kind of initially on your group?
Yeah, I think at face value we have the easiest group. Like
Okay.
we had the easiest group last season too, and it's not
Mm-hmm.
much different. Like there's some new teams in there, but there's some of the bottom teams, so they kind of just swap in and out. But yeah, I think like on paper we have the easiest group, but there's wild cards with that. When you have teams like Energy is not a fun team to be around.
No.
Off drop specifically, and we're learning that pretty quickly. So there's always, it's weird. It's really weird how teams mesh with other teams, especially when they're in the same group. So, yeah, like on paper, easiest, which is cool, but we'll have to see how it plays out.
So if it is the easiest group, I want to ask you kind of what your goals are for this split then in Pro League. With that kind of context, then do those goals kind of shift a little bit higher? You raise those expectations of yourself when you look at, okay, we have a big opportunity here with the group draw we got.
Yeah, it's interesting because like last season, we did qualify for playoffs. You're
Mm-hmm.
right. Like it was supposed to be top 10 that would go to LAN, but ended up being an online tournament. So we were top 20. That's ultimately still my goal. I want to qualify for whatever it's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Either I want to qualify for the top 10 or top 20 or whatever it's going to be. I'm not really focused on anything else. Like I don't care where we place in the season, to be
Mm-hmm.
honest, because the season is just like it is what it is. To me, I want to prove that we didn't get lucky. We didn't just get lucky last season with a nice second place the first week. I want to prove that we can stay consistent and qualify. And then I want to look forward, like when we actually get to that big tournament, the playoffs again. That's where I want to get. That's what I want to win. Don't care about the regular season standings per se, as long as we qualify.
And do you feel good? You've talked about that kind of lack of a honeymoon phase and really kind of picking apart some of the issues of really building that kind of foundational chemistry right now. What is your confidence level then going into the first weekend of Pro League? Because, one thing to note for folks at home, if you don't necessarily watch a lot of ALGS, the season's not very long, right? It starts and it's over in less than like 2 months, and you don't have a ton of opportunities to compete in there. So going into this weekend, what is your confidence level like, and how quickly do you feel like you guys can like ramp up to that level where you're in that playoff conversation?
Yeah, like I said, I think we're on pace for being like a solid team in
Mm-hmm.
Pro League. Like I said, like I think I think we can be a top 10 team in Pro League
Okay.
by the rate we're going at. I think like we're definitely making some mistakes, but they're interlinked with a lot of the mistakes we're making are because of lack of Stormpoint map knowledge. which is like, what are you gonna do, right? Like we've scoured that map. Like I've spent like hours in that map lately, just we found some crazy stuff. That map is ridiculous. but still, when I like actually knowing spots to play or how to play something when there's actually a live game is another conversation.
Sure.
So like a lot of the problems we're running into is map related. Some of it's communication based. Like I'd say like we're having minor problems in like a few different places of our play, but I still feel like as long as we stay loose and stay connected, that like we should be able to kick off Pro League with like a bang, in my opinion.
That's awesome. I'm looking forward to it. Folks, definitely make sure to tune into that this weekend. My last question for you then, Rack, and I will confirm a fact because I may have gotten the ALGS Finals fact wrong at the beginning, so I want to confirm. Was your first competitive event the Liquid Apex Proving Grounds #4 back in early 2019? That is what Liquipedia says, so I want to make sure.
Dude, I actually saw that they put that there. That's actually ridiculous. So I told you that I played the game for like the first couple of weeks when it first came out. It might have been a little longer than that, maybe like a month. Maybe I gave it like a month of pretty hard playing.
Okay.
And I remember like I wasn't a competitive player, and I just had some friends that I played Blackout with, Call of Duty Blackout with, that I was just playing Apex with, and we all thought we were pretty good. And I remember like, let's sign up for a tournament. I was just like, let's sign up for a tournament.
What the hell?
And it was that, and it was a kill race. Those are kill races back then.
Oh yeah.
So I had no idea. We knew nobody. Like we weren't pro gamers. Like we didn't know anybody. We didn't know what the competition was like. And I was like, I think what did we get, like 12th or something? Like
I didn't look, but I don't think it was super high.
Yeah, but I remember 12th. I was like, oh, okay, like we're actually kind of like up there though. Like it's so funny because I like barely remember that, and I remember like I looked back at that tournament and was like, who was in that tournament back then? And there were some people. Onmu was in that, but like this is even before I even decided to like go even remotely go pro in Apex or take it seriously. So that's so funny that that's listed as my first tournament. So yes, technically.
Okay, so I'm going to make the executive decision here and say that your competitive career started with the Liquid Apex Proving Grounds, that old kill race. So if we do consider that the beginning, then you are pretty quickly approaching the 3-year anniversary of jumping into competitive Apex. I just want to know then, final question for you, what kind of feelings do you have as you look back at these last 3 years of competing?
Yeah, honestly, it's something that I never. I'm probably gonna get like way too emotional about this, but like I will say that I found I've found like a second life in competing, and like I said, the people are what kept me around. And when I look at 3 years of really just making friends, growing my brand, finding out so much about myself as a competitor, as a teammate, and I think it actually is like elevated my quality of life and just like my enjoyment of life so much. And I'm so thankful for like what has become of this game, and the game's growing more than ever, which is crazy. I just I'm just thankful.
That's awesome, and I'm looking forward to whether it's the next year, the next 3 years, whatever you decide to do. I'm looking forward to it. It's been fun to watch you. I appreciate you giving me your time. I'll give you a little time here. Anything you want to say to the folks at home? Anybody you want to thank?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm super thankful. Shout out to anybody that is a fan of mine. I know I don't stream a lot, so I don't know if I deserve your appreciation or your love, but just know that like I'm gonna continue to do this and play until it's not fun anymore. And yeah, thanks.
Hey, I appreciate you giving me your time. To anybody watching, please go make sure to follow and support my man Rack here. I will make sure to put the links in the description, but his Twitter is at Rakkinishu, and he is at twitch.tv/Rakkinishu. He does stream every once in a while, so make sure you follow him over there so you know when he's going live. And of course, he and the Ghost Gaming roster will be competing in the ALGS Pro League Split 2 starting this weekend, so make sure to clear your schedule this weekend. Go support the boys, pick up that ghost gear, whatever you need to do. But that's gonna be it for us, folks. Thanks again, Rack. I appreciate you taking the time, man.
No, thank you, Yeso.
Hey everyone, Yeso here, just doing some final edits and wanted to have a few notes here at the end of the video. One, Want to thank Rack again for taking the time out of his busy schedule to come and talk with me. His answers were awesome, and I really enjoyed the conversation. Please make sure to go and follow him on his socials. They are linked down in the description. And if you guys like the video, please consider liking it and subscribe for more content like this. And if there are other folks in the space that you want me to talk to, think I would have a great conversation with, please slap them down in the comments. Thanks so much, everyone.